I would like it known, this video is made entirely out of spite. Okay, maybe not entirely out of spite, but largely out of spite. But first, hello. Welcome to my discussion of Girls' Day. Now here's why we're here. Here's the main catalyst of why we're here. The spiteful reason at least. Back when I made my sister video like a year ago now, I was talking to the bestie. And I was telling the bestie, I was like, bestie, I'm making a Sistar video. She was like, why are you bothering to talk about Sistar? Just talk about Girls' Day instead. They're Sistar but better. And I was like, are you good? Anyway, that brings us to today. Today, the 15th anniversary of the debut of Girls' Day, the perfect catalyst for me to spend probably a couple hours of my Saturday sitting here explaining to you all that the bestie was wrong, okay? That I am right and that Girls' Day are not Sistar but better. However, before I begin the lovely timeline of Girls' Day, we have to take a moment and do shoutouts. I must give credit where credit is due. First and foremost, Miss Smoky Glow. Here's the thing with this diva. She's AWOL again. She's been AWOL for a hot minute. I hope she's doing well. The point is, back when she made YouTube videos, she's a YouTuber. She used to make YouTube videos. And when she did, she used to make these evolution of videos, which are what originally inspired me to make these. I say this every time, I know the concept of a deep dive isn't like an original concept to her. She was not the first one to make a deep dive into someone. However, they are what inspired me. So I'm giving her credit, and I will put her channel and evolution of playlist in the description. I would recommend both of them. She takes YouTubers and occasionally makeup companies dive through their history. They are really interesting. Secondly, the bestie. The bestie is, legally speaking, the catalyst of this video. Like, I wouldn't have made a history of Girls' Day had the bestie not been deranged and incorrect. So she does get a shout out for that. She also gets credit for the slideshow aspect of these videos. When I make these videos, at least if you watch like my older ones, I did not make slideshows. And in retrospect, I don't know why. I love to make a silly little slideshow. So I make slideshows now because when me and the bestie were watching the Grammys one year, she was like, hey, you should make your history of into slideshows. And I was like, you're so smart. You're so wise. I will now be doing that. Lastly, my lovely little Bean. Bean is the reason I can make long videos. Bean is the only reason I can sit here for what seems like eternities and just talk about an endless number of K-pop groups, and I, for the record, couldn't be happier. I love making these. They're so fun. And we should all say thank you to Bean for that. Bean is also, dare I say, my biggest fan? Definitely my most supportive fan. Bean does not care about K-pop. Bean cannot be bothered to care, and she watches every single history of to get to her shout-out. So today's shout-out, Bean, I love you. I'm so glad we got to talk yesterday, and no, I did not get snatched. Okay, shoutouts are done. Last thing before we can begin is, of course, my disclaimer side. None of them are scary. I'm covering my bases. I do trust Girls' Day stands to be, like, the most normal of any group I've recently covered, entirely because if you were a Girls' Day stan when you were, like, a teenager, you're at a minimum in your 20s now. Like, if you were 13 when they were last active, you're 21 now. So, like, I trust them all to be relatively well-adjusted, but I am going to cover my bases. First and foremost, I'm actually only covering 2010 through 2017. I'm covering what I consider the actual active years of Girls' Day. Girls' Day has not disbanded even to this day. They are technically an active group. However, the main chunk of lore ends in 2017. That's when we got our last album. That's where I'm choosing to end the video. Secondly, I will not be covering every activity. This goes both for members and the group as a whole. I'm not covering every Girls' Day show, right? Like, I'm not covering every variety show appearance. I'm not covering it all. I make too many things. I can't commit to that, okay? That's for the group. For the members, be prepared for me to skip like 80% of the acting lore. Here's the thing. I made an EXO video a while back, you may recall, if you watched it. It's really fucking long. And the thing is, I tried to cover a lot of acting lore in that, and I realized it was a mistake. Because the acting lore 90% of the time is not relevant to the group's actual history. And also, I don't care about it, and I don't want to do it, and I am a despot. Third and final disclaimer, opinions will be shared. How do I want to put this delicately? Girls' Day has some iconic songs to their name. Dare I say some of my favorite K-pop songs? At least one. There is one Girls' Day song that I think will go down in history as one of the greatest K-pop songs ever made. However, they have a lot of singles, and they are what I can only describe generously as a mixed bag. okay? There are gonna be some singles that we talk about that I don't like, and we all need to be okay with that. Alrighty, that covers everything. Let us now have a member time. We must meet the original lineup of Girls' Day. And as always, we will be going in age order. So starting us off, we have Park Sojin. She was born on May 21st, 1986, and served as our leader and lead vocal. Fun facts about Sojin include she was the vocal trainer for the boy group Ulala Session, a group I have heard of, I've never engaged with. Maybe I should. That's not the point. The point is she was their vocal trainer. She also is good at calligraphy, and at one point made an Instagram account for her cats. It has been inactive for like a hot minute as of me taking these notes, but like, she had an Instagram account for her cats. That's kind of iconic. Next we have our first former member with Miss Uchihe. She was born on May 14th, 1989, and served as the group's main dancer and main rapper. Jay would leave Girls' Day back in 2012, and dare I say, the funniest thing to have ever happened. She immediately dropped a collab with an ex-Girls' Day member. Like, within weeks. It's so funny to me. I love it so bad. She is also trained at ballet. She's a ballet dancer. And she likes to hike. I do respect that stance. It's not for me. Our next member is Hwang Ji-sun. She was born on October 17th, 1989, and served as the lead vocal and sub-rapper of Girls' Day. Or at least she did, technically. She's one of the two that left, like, immediately after Girls' Day debuted. I actually don't know that much about her. I do know she's married to Hoon from U-Kiss. Good for her. Now for our final former member, Miss Lee Jean. She was born on March 13th, 1992, and served as the group's main vocal for the, 90 seconds she was in the group. She's the other member that left right after Girls' Day debuted. However, I do have some fun facts about her for you all. Fun fact number 1, she has a YouTube channel. Good for her. Twins. You and me both, diva. Second thing, she is still close with Jie, the other former member, or one of the other former members. You may recall they released a collab together. This is the one she released a collab with, if you're all wondering. And also, she was the bassist in the band Bpop. Rounding out our original lineup of Girls' Day, we have Miss Bang Mina. She was born on May 13th, 1993, and served as the main vocal as well. She was also technically the maknae, but, we all know who shows up. So, I didn't put it on there. That's not her role. Anyway, for Mina's fun facts. First and foremost, she iconically has an excavator's license, like the big truck thing. She can use one of those. Don't ask me why. Actually, I guess you can ask. I don't know the answer. No one knows the answer. Her sister was also in Wannabe, that ancient girl group. Good for them. Good for both of them. Anyway, this concludes the original lineup. As mentioned, our lineup is, of course, going to change pretty shortly. However, we will deal with our new members when they choose to show up. And until then, let us begin the official timeline of Girls' Day. Okay, our tale begins 15 years ago on July 9th, 2010, when Girls' Day would release Girls' Day Party Number 1, their debut EP under Dream Tea Entertainment, along with its lead single, Tilt My Head. And in spite of the monumental success Girls' Day will go on to have, this was not the biggest hit. It was, dare I say, a pretty big flop. Tilt My Head would spend a singular week on the charts. It would make it to number 83 on the Gaon charts and 76 on the Melon charts. But, yes, it's a charter. It is good to chart with your debut, but we're not talking a hit by any. That said, I do kind of get it. Here's the thing. You may have noticed I titled this video K-pop Chameleons. That is because in my listening of Girls' Day's discography, I noticed one key thing. They are very good at keeping up with what is popular and making that kind of sound. Now, you can say that they're just chasing success, chasing what's popular. You could say that. I don't think of it that way. However, that does not apply for their debut. For future songs, they definitely make the sound more of their own. This is very classic second-gen sound. This is essentially just a Tiara song, except why would I listen to this when I can go listen to a Tiara song? Then there's the B-sides on this thing. There's 2 of them. The first one is Shoopy Shoopy, and I would like to confess something about me, okay? I've made a lot of these videos. I've made so many of these deep dives at this point, and as part of that process, I sit down and I listen to their discography. I actually usually listen to it, as I take the notes. As I take the notes for one album, I listen to that album, and then I start the next album. And I have never once skipped a song. I have heard some horrendously bad songs I can't stand. I have never skipped a song, or at least failed to finish a song, I should say. And so this is one of the worst girl group songs I've ever heard. I genuinely could not get through it. It made me want to commit acts of terror. The other song though, Control, that's the sound that I'm more accustomed to from Girls' Day. It's also the better song. It's still on the rougher side. Like, don't go into this thinking you're getting something that's gonna be like circa 2014 Girls' Day. You're not getting that. But it's definitely the stronger of the two and will mark our inaugural Golden B-side. For the unaware, my Golden B-side award is the award I made up, and I give it to my favorite B-side on the albums we discuss. They must have a B-side, to be clear, but it goes to my favorite. It does not have to go to the best. This has gotten me into actual debates with the bestie. It does not have to go to the best song on the album. It has to go to my favorite song on the album, although in this case, Control is both the best and my favorite. However, we did not waste any time, and within 2 weeks of their debut, Girls' Day had already made their comeback with How About Me, their first digital single. I have to assume this was meant to go on their debut EP, and then it got pulled off to be its own thing, because like it came out 2 weeks later. I'm not exaggerating when I say it's 2. Anyway, let's talk about the song's success, or more or less lack thereof. It did about as well as their debut had done. It peaked at number 88 on the Gong charts, 69 on the Mellow charts, again, only charted for a week. So we didn't expand on successes, but at least we didn't go down. Musically, meanwhile, I do like it. It's sort of like, it's cutesier than anything they'd done on their debut, but not in like a bubblegum way, if that makes sense. In my mind, when I was listening to it for the first time, my brain was like, this is like a cutesy Kara song. And in retrospect, I'm deranged for saying that. Like, I am right, but I'm not. I can't explain it. I like it, though. It's good. I would say it's my favorite of their songs up until this point in their career, but they have 4, so that's not really saying much. However, it was not long after promotions had ended for their new single that we would get the announcement of a lineup change, with Jisun and Jin departing the group to make way for 2 new members. So let's go meet our new divas. First, Kim Ah-young, aka Yura. She was born on November 6th, 1992, and took over duties as main rapper, lead dancer, and sub-vocal. Now, Yura is known for a couple different things. I'm choosing to highlight one, okay? She insured her legs for $500,000. Now, on the one hand, I do get it. Like, her legs are kind of essential to doing her job. She can't really perform without legs. I guess she could. She just couldn't dance. I don't know. I feel like when you're the lead dancer, being unable to dance would be an issue. Either way, she insured her legs for $500,000. I would like to know how one goes about doing that, hypothetically speaking. No time to dwell on that. We must meet our newest member, Ihieri. She was born on June 9th, 1994, serving as the new main dancer, lead rapper, and face of... I know, in my spirit, someone who's not as attuned to the Girls' Day lore was watching my original lineup section and was like, hold the fucking phone. Where is Hyeri? And that is because this girl is far and away the most well-known member of Girls' Day. For some context, okay, for a frame of reference, Hyeri has around 10 million Instagram followers. The other members of Girls' Day combined have around 4 million, so this is very much like a Cha Eun-woo Astra situation. And like Cha Eun-woo, she is very known for her acting lore. She made her acting debut back in 2012 and has since appeared on a slew of TV shows, variety shows, hosting duties. She's done it all, and she's done it to, dare I say, widespread acclaim. However, thus concludes the new lineup of Girls' Day. We have our new 5, and they actually make it more than a couple months, so we all cheered. And we would not have to wait long for our new lineup's first release, because on October 29th, we got Girls' Day Party number 2, along with its lead single, Nothing Lasts Forever. And while Nothing Lasts Forever was not a massive success, it was their biggest hit to date. It would peak at number 63 on the Gong charts, their highest weekend single there, as well as making it to number 72 on the Melon chart. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're looking at these peaks and being like, that is roughly similar to their first releases, and you're right, because what changed with Nothing Lasts Forever is that this song got any sense of longevity. It didn't chart for very long, but it did chart for more than 1 week. It charted for around a month, which is drastic improvements from their first 2 singles. Musically speaking, meanwhile, I mean this with no disrespect. This is a 21 song. Listen. I'm just saying, if you took this exact song, had the 21 members record it, like no changes whatsoever aside from who actually sang it, and you plopped it on the To Anyone album, like their 2010 full, it would fit in. It would fit perfectly. Now, to be fair, I love that album, So I'm not mad. And I do also really like this song. I think musically they have definitely improved with each release, at least amongst their singles. And that continued with this one. This is my favorite of their titles so far. I think it holds up the best in a 2025 listen. And that just about wraps up 2010. So why don't we pause for a minute and take a little retrospective, if you will. Okay, welcome to the retrospective corner. If you're new here and you haven't seen my other history, I just like to end every year, or most years, I should say. I like to end most years with just a little retrospective, a little synopsis of the year. I think it's fun, and I am a despot, and I can do what I want. It's my video. Now, 2010 is really interesting to me because Girls' Day was not popular, not even a little bit. And I think one of the biggest things that held them back in this year was the music they chose to make. That sounds mean, but hear me out. Girls' Day's 2010 releases were essentially just lesser versions of sounds being done better by bigger girl groups. Their debut single sounded like a Tiara song. Their last single of 2010 sounded like a 2NE1 song. Why would I go listen to the Girls' Day version of the song when 2NE1 the album already exists and is better, right? I think that's really what held them back, is the fact that they didn't have any songs that the general public could really sink their teeth into and like really get into. Aside from that, though, 2010 didn't have any major developments, which is kind of crazy when you consider there was a whole lineup change. And I do wonder, like, what Girls' Day would have looked like had they kept the original five. Like, had Hyeri never joined, for example, what would Girls' Day look like? I do wonder that sometimes, but it doesn't really matter. Like, the original lineup lasted 2 months max. Like, they were not a set lineup. No one really cared when they changed, which I guess is good, to Girls' Day's credit. Like, it was so early, no one really noticed and no one really cared. So at least there's... Anyway, that's all I got for 2010. So let's move to 2011. Alrighty, welcome back. Time for 2011, the first full year of Girls' Day. And we begin our year on a March 18th with the release of Girls' Day Party No. 3, the group's latest digital single led by Twinkle Twinkle. Now, I said before that one thing that holds Girls' Day back is their sounds are very generic second gen. There's nothing really there that would draw people in, make them want to hear more, and more importantly, there was nothing that really drew me in and made me want to hear more. This, however, is the comeback where that changed. If you think like generic second gen cutesy, they haven't broken their generic second gen curse yet, but they did generic second gen cutesy. Think Oh Bad Girls Generation, that kind of vibe. That's this. And I won't say I love it, but I will say I get it, and I do like it more than any of their other singles so far. My opinions, however, clearly don't matter. This song was insane. This song blew up and made Girls' Day a household name. People knew who they were now, and this would go down as one of the biggest hits of 2011. Twinkle Twinkle would peak at number 5 on the Gaon charts and number 4 on the Melon charts. Their first top 10 on either chart, and had an incredible charting one. It went chart for around 4 months, making it one of the longest charting girl group songs released that year. But that's not all. This thing went crazy on streaming, okay? It would close 2011 as the 4th most streamed song released that year, and the most streamed song by a girl group according to the year-end Gaon streaming charts. Plus, there's the sales to talk about. Now, 2011, for people who don't know, 2011 was the peak of downloads for K-pop, right? If you look at even like the biggest groups, a lot of them have their best-selling singles in 2011 because that's when download numbers peaked. Girls' Day is one of those groups. This is their highest-selling song to this day with more than 2 million downloads. In short, Twinkle Twinkle was incredibly huge. It was a massive hit, and I don't want to say it made Girls' Day popular, because that isn't the right term for what comes to happen, but it certainly made them a much more known entity than they had been in 2010. Moving on, around a month after the release of Twinkle Twinkle, we would get the release of Give Me Your Heart, our first Girls' Day OST for the show Twinkle Twinkle. I'm gonna be so real. I'm including this like 60% because I just think it's funny. They did a song for the show Twinkle Twinkle immediately after releasing the smash hit Twinkle Twinkle, although this song did do well. It would begin number 28 on the Gaon charts. It's also pretty good. Like, it's a light poppy ballad type of vibe. The vocals are pretty. However, this is not essential listening for a Girls' Day. There are groups out there where like some of their OSTs are absolutely essential listening. This isn't one of those. Like, it's fine if you skip it, but you'll enjoy it if you hear it. The next few months after that are pretty quiet, so we're going to jump ahead to July 6th, when we would get our first physical release from Girls' Day with their Everyday EP. Now this means for the first time ever, we have album sales to discuss. This album sold fine. It did fine. It would peak at number 4 on the Gallon charts and sold around 10,000 copies. I've covered much more successful groups. I've covered less successful groups in terms of physical sales. It's fine. And then there's the title track. This album would be led by the single Hug Me Once. And you might be thinking, after the monumental success of Twinkle Twinkle, we've entered peak Girls' Day. We've entered the era where Girls' Day is releasing massive hits. They're doing well. You're wrong. At least, you're kind of wrong. Hug Me Once would peak at number 15 on the Gallon charts and number 20 on the Melon charts. Their second highest peaking mainline single to date, and drastically better than anything they put out in 2010, but it was no Twinkle Twinkle. This would also have a much shorter charting run. It would chart for around 2 months and sold 1.5 million downloads, and again, in comparison to anything they dropped in 2010, this is incredible. This is a huge improvement. However, in comparison to their last single, it is a very sharp decline. Anyway, let's talk about the song itself now, shall we? Here's the thing with Hug Me Once. I feel like if you look at the first 4 mainline Girls' Day singles, and you take out one of them, 3 of them are, the ones off their Girls' Day party singles specifically, are essentially Girls' Day's take on the sounds done by bigger second-gen groups. You have a Tiara single, you have a 2NE1 single, you have a Girls' Generation single. This one sort of takes the best parts of those songs and combines them. Like, if you came up to me and you asked me, Simon, can you tell me the things that made late-stage second-gen girl group sounds what they are? I would have listed things like the auto-tune, the more electronic vibes, various elements of bubblegum. This song has all of those things, but they combine in the perfect way that actually works really well. Now, for the record, I do have theories about what happened with the success of this album, or the decline in success for this album, and we will get to those. We're going to talk about those in the retrospective corner. For now, I want to talk about the other songs that are on this album, because we have B-sides to cover. Or more accurately, we have a B-side to cover. The Everyday EP had 5 songs on it, including the title, and its instrumental, and 2 of their other singles. So there's really only 1 new song on here. Which means, by default, our golden B-side is going to go to Young Love. And it's a fine song. It's not groundbreaking by any means. I don't really love it. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard. I will say, though, when the auto-tune comes in, it does go a little too far for me, but, like, it's not the worst thing I've ever heard. I got through this, and I can't say that for every single Girls' Day song. Okay, that's all we got for the album. We're moving on, but still in summer, we would get our next Girls' Day OST with the release of Honey Honey. And here's the thing with this song. Now, I had never heard this song before I made this video, so I listened to it, because I listen to every Girls' Day song. And I'm kind of obsessed with it in, like, a freakish way, like, in an abnormal way. I'm unwell about this song. It's so fun, and it's so cute, but also, like, the bridge is gorgeous. There's this incredible electric guitar. I love this song. This is the best Girls' Day song to date. Like, listen, this song has Mamma Mia energy, not ABBA energy. It has specifically the energy of the ABBA songs in Mamma Mia, which is ironic, because it's called Honey Honey, the name of an ABBA song in Mamma Mia, the opening song in Mamma Mia the film. And listen, I'll concede, I did see Mamma Mia live again recently, and I have been listening to the soundtrack non-stop since, but, like, I'm right about this. Anyway, the song was not a hit. Since we're here, I'll tell you. The song was not a hit. It peaked at number 76 on the Gallon charts. It charted for 1 week. It did not do well, but to me, it is multi-platinum. Moving on from my derangement. September would get us the release of Girls' Day Party number 4, the group's latest digital single, along with its title track, Don't Flirt. And Don't Flirt was around as successful as a whole, I'd say, as Hug Me Once was. It peaked slightly higher. It would make it to number 11 on the Gallon charts and number 12 on the Melon charts. That said, it charted for an even shorter amount of time. It charted for around a month and sold 1 million downloads. And I know what you're thinking. Like, in the modern day, in 2025, a song to get 1 million downloads, a K-pop song specifically, is crazy work. In 2011, songs were doing that in a week. Like, I can name multiple songs that got 1 million downloads in a single week. So, A million downloads is not the same number it is in 2025. It's like if I told you that you sold 100,000 copies in 2010 versus 100,000 copies in 2025. It's like the reverse of that, right? Like, this isn't crazy work. Musically speaking, this is a weird one, okay? It kind of feels like punky, almost. Imagine if Avril Lavigne had made a second-gen K-pop song. That's what this is. I know I sound crazy. That's what this is. I mean it with respect and with love, of course. Like, this song is a mess, but it's a fun mess, and I'm not complaining when I say that. That, however, does wrap up 2011, so we're gonna head back to the retrospective corner now. Okay, 2011. A very complicated year, if I do say so myself. Like, obviously it was successful. Girls' Day went from being just one of a countless number of girl groups that existed to one that could consistently get their singles into the top 20 and chart for a month or two, so at least there is that. And obviously the biggest factor in that change was Twinkle Twinkle. Twinkle Twinkle, to me, as a chart studier, kind of reminds me of, like, Boom Boom by Momoland, or like Bar 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 by Crayon Pop. Like a song where the general public knew the song, and maybe like 10% of that came to Girls' Day, right? Like, if, say, 1 million people went and discovered the song, maybe 100,000 of those people decided, like, let me pay some attention to this group, and maybe like 10% of that was like, I am now a stan, right? Like, obviously we know, sitting here in 2025, what Girls' Day goes on to become. But at the end of 2011, the timeline would not have been shocked had Girls' Day just kept on releasing singles to an ever-dwindling amount of success following Twinkle Twinkle, and eventually fallen. However, we, again, sitting here in 2025, know that Girls' Day doesn't flop, right? We know that that's what happens. So why don't we move on and talk about 2012? Okay, 2012 time. A year that fascinates me, because while I will not say Girls' Day flopped in 2012, I will say of all their full years of activity, this is by far the least successful. They also start off with a little quiet time, so we're actually going to fast forward to March. Cool. So, March 21st, we would get our first acting debut with Yura. Yeah, Yura appeared on the Chinese drama Secret Angel. I did not watch it. I did read the synopsis, and I can say with confidence, had I watched it, I would have fucking hated it. It would have pissed me off so bad. But it's fine. I don't have to watch it. Instead, we can jump ahead to April, when Girls' Day would release Every Day 2, their second mini album. The album was led by Oh My God, and it did around as well as post Twinkle Twinkle singles had done. Number 13 on the Gaon charts, number 22 on the Mountain charts. The song is also kind of iconic, if you ask me. I will say, it reminds me so heavily of Roly Poly by Tiara, but I would also say that, like, Roly Poly by Tiara is, like, the quintessential late second gen song. So, like, I like Roly Poly, and I like this one. Unfortunately, I can't have as nice things to say about the album, specifically its success. It would do horribly, pretty much, I would say. It peaked at number 11 on the Gaon charts, failing to even enter the top 10, and only sold 6,000 copies. I said their debut album, or their first album specifically, did fine, and it did. This did bad. Sales aside, this album's actually pretty great, if you ask me. Don't Flirt is back on here, and we've established I like Don't Flirt, so that's a win for me. Plus, there are 2 new B-sides we have to discuss. I will say that this was a very easy golden B-side to choose. The album's opener, 2 of Us, that's my golden B-side. It's so nice and chill. It has almost no auto-tune in it. It really lets the vocals shine, and the vocals are gorgeous. It is easily my favorite non-OST song we've hit in the Girls' Day canon. But while we have finished our discussion of Girls' Day's album, we have not finished April, because at the end of the month, at long last, we would get Hyeri's acting debut in the SBS show Tasty Life. This show ran kind of forever. It has 40 episodes in it. I haven't seen any of it. I do know Hyeri's in it. Things would quiet down after promotions for Oh My God, you know, aside from the multiple actively airing shows featuring Girls' Day members, but in terms of things they had to actively do, we would calm down. So we're going to jump ahead to July. We would get Vine Song, the group's next OST. Again, not a hit at all. It didn't even crack the top 80 of the Gaon charts, but it is fun. It's cute. It's catchy. I do want someone to explain to me why Girls' Day was consistently popping off with their OSTs. Moving on. August would see Yura taking on another role. Dare I say, the most important role in the history of film. She played the role of character in fanfic on the long-running show Family. I'm so serious. I find this so funny. Like, if you go to Yoda's Wikipedia page, at least if you went there when I was taking these notes, I can't promise it hasn't changed, but if you went to Yoda's Wikipedia page and you went down to her filmography and you looked at all the roles she was in, you would see the role character in fanfic. That is the name of this role, according to Wikipedia.com. And that just amuses me so greatly. I almost need more context for it, except for the fact that this thing has 120 episodes. I'm not doing that. Anyway, in addition to iconic television roles, August would also see the release of Blu-ray in 2012 for The S Project. And to be clear, before we get into it, this was not a mainline Girls' Day single, at least not if you ask me. This was a contribution to an ongoing music collaboration project thing. Like, this was part 2, they each did part 1. So, we're not talking like a Girls' Day comeback. But with that in mind, this thing actually did pretty well. Blu-ray in 2012 would peak at number 21 on the Gaon charts and number 28 on the Melon charts with a charting run of around a month or so. So it was pretty on par with their actual mainline releases. Also, for the song itself, you may have noticed about me, while I enjoy their classic second-gen sounds, like the more auto-tuney sounds, I adore when they take that away and they let the vocals actually shine and let you hear their actual vocals. I love when that happens. Those have consistently been my standouts in Girls' Day's catalog so far, and that's what the song is. The song is just a chill ballad, and I really like it. However, it was not long after the release of Blu-ray in 2012 that we would get the announcement that GA was leaving the group. I'm sure all of you saw this coming because I introduced her as a former member. And also, if you weren't paying attention, you might actually have recalled that for most of their iconic releases, Girls' Day is 4 members, and we've had 5 of them up until this point. So obviously someone was leaving, but yeah, it was GA. She left the group. Now, there are many ways that I have seen in my decade as a K-pop fan. There are many ways I've seen groups handle the departure of a member. And my favorite way is the way Girls' Day did it. Not 10 days later. Girls' Day was dropping Girls' Day Party number 6. And I actually need it known before I get into the success of it that Don't Forget Me, the title track for this single, that's my favorite Girls' Day title to date, okay? This song is, dare I say, the perfect second-gen girl group song. My only complaint is that the verses are too slow. And they're not even like that slow, I just think they're a little too slow. But it's fine, because the chorus is popping the fuck off. Like, if you're gonna take this entire video, and you're only gonna listen to one song from pre-2013, from what I would call classic Girls' Day, please listen to this one. My love aside, this was also the biggest hit Girls' Day had released since Twinkle Twinkle. It would peak at number 14 on the Gaon charts, and here's the thing. 14 on the Gaon charts is normal for Girls' Day at this point in their career. They've had many songs peak in the, 19 to 11 range. Like, that top 20 but not a top 10. That's where most of their singles have landed at this point. The difference is, Don't Forget Me had a much better longevity. Here's the thing. Post Twinkle Twinkle, okay? Most Girls' Day songs had charted for around a month. The longest had been around 8 weeks. This one charted for 3 months. And I know 2 to 3 months, 8 weeks is roughly 2 months, so 2 months to 3 months is not a huge leap, but it does make this their second longest charting song to date. And with that, we have finished 2012. So back to the retrospective corner we go. So, 2012. 2012 is fascinating to me, not so much for the year itself, but the years that it falls between. But this is a 2012 retrospective, and if I want to focus in on just 2012, I would consider the core theme of 2012 to simply be consistency. I love when a group has a baseline that I can work with, that they stray from a little bit, but a general baseline. And Girls' Day was very consistent in 2012. Their singles all did relatively the same levels of well. It was consistent, which I love. Outside of music, meanwhile, we see our first forays into acting, and I'm going to take this moment to remind you all, I'm not covering every acting appearance, right? Again, I can't be bothered. They have a lot of... Hyeri alone has a lot of stuff I could cover. I'm going to cover major things that I deem important, or things I deem funny. There will be things that I find funny later on, but for the most part, I'm not getting into all the acting. Anyway, let's talk about 2013 now. Alrighty, 2013 time. And if you were wondering when in the timeline Girls' Day becomes the group we know them as today, this is the year that happened. However, we're going to begin our year with another digital single with the release of White Day, a rare moment where a Girls' Day digital single does not contain the word party. That's probably because this was the pre-release for their then upcoming first full album. It's also a pretty good song. It's more toned down, which we have established I do enjoy, but it doesn't have the same oomph factor that there are other songs. It also didn't really do anything of note. It didn't peak in the top 40 of the Gong charts. It only charted for 2 weeks. It was not a hit, but it's fine, because that was just the pre-release, and on March 14th, we would get Expectation, the first full album by Girls' Day. And remember when I said that 2013 is the year that Girls' Day becomes the Girls' Day we know them as? This is the comeback that did it. You could literally take Girls' Day's career and describe it as a pre-Expectation and a post-Expectation era. This is their BC and BCE. And that's because the title track blew the fuck up. This song would earn Girls' Day their first top 10 on the Gong charts in years, peaking at number 9. But that is not all. This would become the longest charting Girls' Day song up until this point in their career, with more than 5 months on the charts, beating out Twinkle Twinkle and closing out 2013 as the 5th most successful release by an idol girl group according to the year-end Melon charts. But that's still not all. This song would get more than 1.1 million in downloads, making it the best-selling Girls' Day release in over a year. And then there's international numbers to talk about. Now, Girls' Day was never a big player in terms of YouTube or Spotify, simply because they were sort of pre that era. Even if you look at the groups that have big numbers from 2013, it's mainly groups that have continued to do well in the future. Girls' Day, while they would continue to do well in the future, they were never big players. This song is one of 2 exceptions to that. Expect has more than 50 million views on its music video, and that's just on its music video. The dance practice for this song has more than 35 million on its own. And that also doesn't take into account live performances of the song, several of which have cleared 1 million views. Across all forms, this song has easily picked up more than 100 million views on YouTube. And then there's Spotify numbers. Now, I've said in other history ofs, for songs this old, songs from pre-2018, I don't think of Spotify numbers as a real metric of your real-time success. I think of it much more as a sort of cultural status. How much are the girls still thinking about your song? With 20 million streams, that is a very strong number for a 2013 K-pop song, which means the girls are very much still thinking about this song. And one big factor in the sort of iconic status that Expect has gone on to have is its choreography. There are groups out there that are sort of known for one piece of choreography. The AOA miniskirt choreography was incredibly popular. The after-school pole dancing is iconic. For Girls' Day, it's the suspender. I do want to note, I couldn't find a ton of stuff actually talking about how popular this choreography was at the time. I assume it's mostly because it's in Korean, a language I don't speak. I did do a brief Twitter search, and it did horrify me. I saw a concerning number of vaginas. However, it does need to be known, this choreography was incredibly popular at the time, and is part of why this song blew up to such an extent. However, I also do need to talk about the song itself, because the song itself is a big factor in why it blew up. Not because it's a good song, we'll talk about that in a second, no. Because of when it came out. 2013 was sort of the beginning of this shift away from the sounds that had really dominated second-generation girl groups for the years prior. It was a shift away from EDM, a shift away from autotune, a shift towards a more natural sound, a more mature sound, and Girls' Day was perfectly aligned to take that road. Plus, this song is phenomenal. I can't deny the fact that this song is one of the best girl group songs from the first half of the 2010s, at least in my opinion. It's such a banger. The music is so good. And it was the perfect transition from the more classic sound that Girls' Day had been doing, and was helping them lead this new wave of a more mature and, dare I say, sexier sound that was becoming a lot more popular. Now that we've covered that Expect was a massive hit, let's talk about the album itself, okay? This thing was not as massive, but it did do quite well. Expectation would peak at number 4 on the Gong charts and sell around 15,000 copies. Now, to be fair, neither one of these numbers are insane by a general viewpoint. However, 15,000 copies is roughly what the first 2 Girls' Day EPs sold combined. So for you to get that with your third physical release is a huge jump. That's really good. And then there's the actual music on this album. Like other Girls' Day physical releases, this album was largely made up of already released material. However, we would get 5 whole new B-sides on this thing. And honestly, the B-sides on here are really good. Don't Trust Her. That should have been a summer song. I'm so serious. Like, it's crazy work for a March song. I think as a single in July, it would have been a moment. But also, there's I Don't Mind, which I really like. It's, like, just gorgeous and has this really nice guitar. However, for my golden B-side, I will be giving it to Easy Go. And I would like to ask a question of the general public. A question for the culture, if you will. How have I never heard the song? I would like that known. How has no one in society told me that I need to listen to this song? This song is so good. It's like this almost hyper pop chorus. It's just, I always find it really interesting, like anecdotally. I always find it really interesting after I make these videos to see which songs enter my streaming rotation again. Like there's some where when I made my Haze video, for example, I knew what songs were going to be back in the streaming rotation, and for the most part I was right. When I made my EXO video, I kind of knew what songs were going to come back into the streaming rotation. With Girls' Day, it's different because it's a group whose discography I was far less familiar with outside of the singles. And this is one of the songs. There's 2 songs. There's 3 songs. There's 3 songs that have really entered my streaming rotation since making this video because I've had like 3 weeks since I finished these notes. So I can see what songs do I keep coming back to in the time between when I make the notes and when I film the video. And one of the ones that I keep coming back to is this one. Now that's all the actual lore, but I actually want to take a minute to reiterate how huge the Expectation album was for Girls' Day. Twinkle Twinkle was still very much their biggest hit to date. However, the thing with Twinkle Twinkle was that it grew their fan base a bit, but it did not give them a consistent fan base. This is the comeback that got them that consistent fan base and helped them become one of the biggest second-generation girl groups. And to their credit, Dream Tea was very fast to pick up on how huge Expectation was, which is why in June we got Female President, a repackaged version of the Expectation album. Also, while I cannot say this like for sure, I do believe this is the first repackaged album I've seen that's actually shorter than the original. They pulled the instrumentals and some remixes off of the Expectation album and only added the title track and its instrumental, which means this album is actually 1 song shorter than the Expectation album. But speaking of, let's talk about that new song. Let's talk about Female President. Female President is crucial because it marked the first time Girls' Day was able to put out back-to-back hit singles. Female President would mark the first time since Twinkle Twinkle that Girls' Day managed to earn a top 10 on both the Gaon and Melon charts. It was their 3rd top 10 on the Gaon charts where it peaked at number 5, and their 2nd top 10 on the Melon charts where it peaked at number 8. That said, while it did peak stronger than Expect had, it didn't chart as long. That said, it still charted for 4 months. By the end of its run, this is the 3rd longest charting Girls' Day song, so we're gonna take it, but it is worth noting it is a slight down. However, on a more positive note, this would be Girls' Day's first win. It would give them their first win on a music show with a win on Ikigai on July 7th, just a few days shy of their 3rd anniversary. As for the album itself, it would mark Girls' Day's 3rd top 10 on the God album charts, peaking at number 6, as well as selling 15,000 copies. And again, 15,000 copies, not crazy work, not even really for the time. But again, for Girls' Day, that is really strong. It's also worth noting that Female President outsold Expectation physically, a rare feat. I know that like a lot of people can list examples of a repackage that outsold the original. The one thing I've noticed as like a consistent trend, repackages only really outsell the original when the group is on the rise, when they're very clearly getting bigger and bigger with each comeback. Once they've established themselves, that is no longer the case. So it is worth noting this outsold the original version. As a whole though, Female President is good. It definitely helped solidify Girls' Day as a consistent hit maker instead of just sort of one-off random hits that they might have been viewed by even at this point. Twinkle Twinkle, I will remind you, is still their biggest hit, and after releasing it, they didn't get another major hit for 2 years. So it was very possible that Expect would do really well, and then Girls' Day would slip back down. Female President is the song that proved, no, they're actually here to stay. However, if I'm being honest, I do understand why in the modern day, we as a society collectively definitely remember Expect a lot more fondly than Female President. Female President is a good song, to be clear. It is enjoyable. I like it when it comes on autoplay. However, I would not consider it nearly as iconic. I can say personally, I've sought this song out to listen to maybe 3 or 4 times in my entire life. However, you know what's better than 2 comebacks in 3 months? 3 comebacks in 4 months, because at the end of July, we would get Girls' Day Party #6, the group's latest digital single. The album was led, or the single for the digital single was Please Tell Me. This was the title track. And I will say, for the group's third single in 4 months, this did do quite well. It would be #9 on the Gaon charts, so another top 10 for Girls' Day. It did, however, have a much shorter charting run, around their shortest charting run in close to a year with 2 months charting. And I will say, I do get it. Remember when I said that Girls' Day should have dropped Don't Trust Her as a summer single? They dropped Please Tell Me instead. And Please Tell Me is not a bad song. I would even dare to say it's a good song. It's kind of just a lesser Sistar summer single, if that makes sense. And I will give credit where credit is due. 2013 is really the only post-Queens of Summer era where Sistar didn't drop a summer single. But even so, I would sooner listen to a Sistar song than this. Moving on. After promotions for Please Tell Me, we would get an actual break, which makes sense. That's good. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit to when Mina would make a cameo appearance on the show Master's Son. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering why I'm telling you about a cameo. We will be circling back. Just keep this in the back of your mind for the next 5 minutes. Cameos aside, things would actually be pretty quiet for the next couple months until October, when Girls' Day would release Let's Go, their latest digital single and yet another rarity that didn't contain the party naming convention. Let's Go was, admittedly, a bit of a flop. It charted for 1 week, didn't crack the top 50 of the Gaon charts. To be fair, it is not a mainline Girls' Day song, and to my knowledge, they did not promote this thing anywhere, so I do get why it underperformed. It's also, I'm gonna say, a complicated song. That's the terminology I'm gonna use for it. The lyrics, the verses, the chorus, the actual singing part, it's fine. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing special. The music is amazing. I'm so serious. I think this is some of the strongest background music in Girls' Day's entire catalog. And it was a poorly paired up thing with the lyrics. Anyway, remember when I said you needed to remember the Master Son cameo for 5 minutes? I lied. You only needed to remember it for 90 seconds because we're already back to it. Miracle, a short film SBS released during the SBS Gaia at the end of the year that Mina was in. It is a parody of Master's Son. I find it very, very amusing, 20% at a minimum, because Taemin of Shiny. However, that is all I got for 2013, so we will once more be returning to the retrospective corner. So, 2013. I think we can all agree 2013 is the year that Girls' Day, actually became popular. And I feel like the biggest factor in that is something I talked about when I was talking about the Expectation album, which is that the sounds of K-pop, the popular sounds that a lot of the girl groups were doing, were changing in 2012 and 2013, and Girls' Day was so perfectly suited to this more mature sound that got really popular, from 2012 to 2014, and they did not hesitate to capitalize on that. Girls' Day obviously wasn't doing terribly during the, cutesy EDM reign of K-pop, but I do think it isn't a coincidence that once the more mature sound took off in 2013, 2014, that's when Girls' Day peaked, right? I think that because they were so perfectly suited to this more vocally based sound is a big factor in why they were so popular during their reign. I'm starting to spiral. I spent so much time contemplating the actual overall shifts in the sound K-pop groups make when I was making this. We need to move on. We need to move on before I start talking about how A-Pink's decision to stay in bubblegum pop really helped them solidify their place in girl group history. Alrighty. It's time to talk about 2014, a year that is, by every single metric, the peak of Girls' Day. And we do not have a second to waste, because on January 3rd, Girls' Day would release Everyday 3, their third mini-album led by the one, the only, Something. We're actually going to start with the album, mainly because I want to get it out of the way. I think we all know I have to talk about the title track, so we're going to get the album done first. Everyday 3 did pretty great by Girls' Day standards. It would peak at #4, which was getting pretty standard for them at this point. However, its sales saw a huge jump, with more than 25,000 copies sold, a 40% increase from their last album. Okay, we're done with the album. We need to talk about something. I'm gonna say, I bet hard cash, the entirety of my savings, if I walked up to the average K-pop listener and they'd only heard one Girls' Day song, it's this one. Something is far and away the most successful and most iconic release Girls' Day has in their entire catalog. First, let's talk about the charts. Something would become Girls' Day's highest peaking single on the Gaon charts at the time, where it would make it to number 2. However, in spite of not topping the weekly chart, Girls' Day Something would actually top the monthly chart for January. Meanwhile, over on the Melon charts, Something would go number 1. It would mark Girls' Day's first and only chart topper on the weekly Melon charts, where it would spend 2 weeks at number 1. But that is not all, because not only did Something have a strong peak on the charts, it had longevity. The song charted for 22 weeks, making it, to this day, the longest charting Girls' Day song. That longevity and that peak meant that Something did extremely well in terms of year-end charts. According to the year-end Melon charts, Something was the 9th biggest hit of 2014 and the 2nd biggest hit by a girl group that year, beating out massive girl group hits like AOA's Miniskirt, as well as much more established hit makers like Sistar's Touch My Body, 21's Come Back Home. The only girl group song that outperformed this according to the Melon charts was Mr. Chu by A-Pink. However, according to the year-end Gaon download charts, Something was the best-selling single by a girl group in 2014, outselling all their competition and being the 10th highest selling release that year with 1.5 million downloads sold. However, I'm not done. We've established that Girls' Day Something was a hit on the charts, right? It was also a hit on music shows. This song would pick up 6 wins. And spoilers, kind of, Girls' Day's never been a huge player in terms of music show wins. Throughout their career, they only get 12 total wins. Half of them came from this song. Additionally, like Expect Before It, Something is an absolute classic of this era of K-pop, which has led to incredible streaming numbers. Over on Spotify, this song has 55 million streams, making it one of the most streamed girl group songs released in 2014 and the most streamed song by Girls' Day. Meanwhile, on YouTube, it did even better. The dance version of the Something music video has 72 million views, while the main version has another 33 for a combined 105 million. Plus, the audio track has another 11 million, and then there's the stages, pretty much all of which have over 1 million views, with the most viewed having 33 million views on its own. Or, more accurately, I should say, the most viewed version featuring the members of Girls' Day released during the promotional period has 33 million views, because this is a song that people love to cover. Back in 2017, Mina's sister would go on I Can See Your Voice, where she would perform Something. That performance has 64 million views on YouTube.com. And then there's the Boys' Day covers, which has multiple versions of the performance sitting at around 10 million. And on the topic of the Boys' Day cover, I think about this event alarmingly often for something that happened before I could drive a car. It is one of the most iconic things K-pop has ever done. I will die on that hill. I want us to look at this lineup for a minute, okay? We have pre-bulkification Minhyuk. We have Minky from Newest, looking like the most beautiful woman you've ever met. We have Hongbin from VIX in a fuck-ass bob, and then some man from Ajax, who I don't know. Anyway, in case you can tell from this image, the Boys' Day cover is a full drag performance of Something by Girls' Day. Like, the Girls' Day members do it at the start, and then at the halfway point, they leave, and the Boys' Day members come in. You ever sit and think about things that would never happen in K-pop in the modern day? Like, you would never get 4 members of at least some popularity level boy group. You would never get them to all link up as a 4-way collaboration, go full drag and do a girl group cover. That would never happen in the modern day. Fragile masculinity would prevent it, and I think it needs to come back. I think the labels need to step in, they need to intervene, and they need to essentially force drag on the masses. Now, I've been sitting here for long enough talking about this song's success and the cinematic universe around it. I feel like I should mention, it's also really good. Like, Something is one of my favorite songs released by a 2014 girl group, and is easily my favorite Girls' Day title. Probably because it's the one I've heard the most, but also because it is really good. It's sexy, and it's toned down, but it still fucks so perfectly. Like, there are several factors we can discuss, and we have discussed, as to why this song did so well, and I do think one big part of it is simply that this song is a masterpiece. We do desperately need to move on, but I want to say one more thing. One final thought on Something, okay? Girls' Day was obviously popular before something came out. This song marked their fourth consecutive top 10 on the Gaon charts. Like, they clearly already had a large fan base. They were already popular. Something is the song that made Girls' Day legends. Okay, now that that's done, let's talk B-sides, because somehow this album is the first thing to contain exclusively new material. Granted, there are only 5 songs on here, the title track and the instrumental being 2 of them, but I'll take what I can get. That said, what we got is very good. There's Show You, which is pretty low-key, but it's still cute, and the vocals are stunning. Plus the opening song on this album, how do I want to put this? It's a song that I really like in the context of the album. Like, I would never seek it out and listen to it on its own, but when you sit down and you put this album on, and that's the opening song, it absolutely hits. However, for our golden B-side, I gotta give it to Whistle. I absolutely gotta give it to Whistle. That song is so fucking good. I love that song so bad. Here's my thing with that song. It's another one where it was the summer single. I would have loved it, but I'm so happy with what we got. And, like, for the record, produced by Double Sidekick, iconic producer of Crash by BAP, as well as a handful of Sistar hits. Okay, we're done. I promise we're done. We're done with this album. We're done. Girls' Day didn't do much following it. They were mainly just basking in success, so we are actually going to fast forward to summer. So, June. June saw Yura appearing on the absolute fever dream, and that was We Got Married. That show where idols would cosplay as a married couple. It was a mess. It was a hot fucking mess. I miss it dearly. We should absolutely bring it back. Yura would appear with Hong Jonghyun. He's an actor and a model. I'd never heard of him before making this video, but I have heard of some of the stuff he's in. Good for him. Either way, they were on the show from June through the next year. Then, in July, Girls' Day would release Everyday number 4, the group's 4th mini album, along with its lead single, Darling. And Darling, while No Something, was a huge hit, okay? It would peak at number 1 on the Gaon charts. The first and only chart topper Girls' Day had over there. While over on the Melon charts, it would peak at number 3. It also charted for a good bit. It would spend around 4 months on the charts. For some context, that's around as long as Touch My Body by Sistar had done. So, not bad. Charts aside, Darling would also sell around 1.2 million downloads and pick up another 3 music show wins for Girls' Day. Basically, Darling was huge, right? Like, Darling was a massive hit. It was one of the most successful girl group songs of 2014. It just wasn't something. Musically, meanwhile, I like Darling. It is sort of a shift back towards a cutesier sound, and while I do prefer the more adult vibes of other Girls' Day singles, Darling is fun. Like, it's a good time. Plus, maybe it's the fact that when I took these notes, it was in the 70s. Right now, it's June. It has summer energies, okay? And I love the summer energies that it has. Anyway, enough about Darling. Let's talk about the album, which continued the trend of outperforming past release. This album would peak at number 3 on the Gaon charts, the group's highest peaking album to date, as well as their highest selling, with 30,000 copies sold. And then there's the B-sides, and frankly, this is another great album. We only really have 2 B-sides to discuss because I don't like the opener, and while I do greatly enjoy Look at Me, I am absolutely giving my golden B-side to Timing. That song is, dare I say, one of the perfect summer songs for me. Like, that song slaps, for starters. I love the chorus. It's summer in a song form. I want to stream it by the pool. Unfortunately, I don't have a pool. Promotions for Darling would take us into August, which is when Hyeri would appear on the show Real Men. And if you were wondering when, Hyeri, the cultural powerhouse outside of her status as a Girls' Day member, really began, it was this show, right? Hyeri did not do much on this show, admittedly, but what she did do was go insanely viral. Like, millions and millions of views, and even winning a Best Newcomer award for her appearance on this show. Like, Hyeri was obviously a known entity before her appearance on this show. Her group had 2 of the biggest hits released that year. She'd been in other shows before this one. However, this is when she became, like, famous. She apparently made so much money from the endorsements she got immediately after the show. She bought her parents a house. She bought a house with the money she got from appearing on the show. There were talks of a spin-off of Real Men that was Hyeri-centric. She was a cultural icon out of nowhere. September was quiet again, but October got us the release of the I Miss You EP, the only Girls' Day mini album that was not named Every Day. It was also unique in a different way. This album wasn't an album. Or more accurately, it was not a CD. The I Miss You EP was exclusively available as a smart card, which unfortunately means because of the way the Gaon charts tracked album sales back in 2014, they did not classify this thing as an album, which means they did not track data for this album, or at least they did not publish data for this album, which means I don't know how much it sold. Do you understand how crazy that makes me? I'm deranged. I need access to my number. Anyway, another reason this thing was unique is that it was made up almost entirely of already released tracks. This was a ballad album. Girls' Day took the ballads off their last few albums, took them together, and made them the B-sides of this thing, with the only actual new song being the title track. And speaking of the title track, I Miss You, the song was absolutely a hit, right? Like, this song did well, with the caveat, it is the least successful thing Girls' Day put out in around a year, and certainly their least successful in 20. With that said, it peaked at number 4 on the Gaon charts. It was their 6th consecutive top 10 single over there. However, on the Melon charts, it failed to break into the top 10. It only peaked at number 13, which is not bad, but it is low. It also didn't chart nearly as long. I Miss You charted for around 2 months, which is not bad, but again, is a drop. It also sold way less. It sold like 500,000 copies. It sold less than half of what their previous single had done. I do feel the need to note, though, they also did not promote this song at all. And I feel like on this channel, I've made the very clear stance. I'm of the opinion, unless you're like one of like 3 or 4 artists, or idol groups, I should say to be specific, you do kind of need to promote in some form if you want your song to really be like a huge hit. There are exceptions, of course, but for the most part, the lack of promotions definitely did not help this song. That said, I should also mention that while I enjoy I Miss You, it is the weakest of the 3 Girls' Day singles we got in 2014. And even in comparison to their 2013 singles, it's not as strong. It's a ballad, and we've established I really enjoy Girls' Day ballads. However, I do have one key question. Why is there a rap? Listen, I understand that, like, legally speaking, Yuta is our main rapper. I get that. However, she's not been rapping in Girls' Day singles, at least not in their recent ones. So I don't know why the one moment they were like, wait, we need to remind the masses we also have a rapper. I don't know why they chose the ballad title for that. Like, I'm curious why this decision was made. Whatever, let's talk about the B-sides. I'm not going to get too into them. All of the songs have already been released. However, I do want to pick a golden B-side, and I'm giving it to Look at Me, which is a ballad off of the Darling EP, their Girls' Day Everyday 4 album. That song is beautiful. That song is gorgeous. That song is stunning. It actually made me like a little sad that I didn't get to give it the golden B-side for that album, which is definitely a factor in why I picked it for this one. Anyway, that's all the like main line things to cover, but we are going to close out the year with Schoolgirl Detective. It was our first viral Hyeri show, and I bring this up for one key reason. Was this show good? Here's the thing. I read the Wikipedia page for this show. Like, I read the synopsis on Wikipedia, and I was like, wait a minute. This sounds interesting. So I Googled some reviews, and I found very little in English, which makes sense, but like, I'm currently speaking to what is presumably going to be the largest audience of Girls' Day fans I will ever be interacting with. I'm hoping at least one of you watched this show and can tell me if it was good. Because, like, I am intrigued. There's Canon Yuri. That's always a win for me. Like, I want to know if it's worth my time. Also, since we're here, I will tell you, this thing started airing in mid-December. It ran through March of 2015. I'm telling you that only because I brought up the show, because I do want to know if it's good. Like, I do want to know if I should watch it, but also since we're here, I might as well tell you that it aired then. However, that is all I have for 2014. So once more to the retrospective corner we go. Oh my god, 2014 was fucking nuts. Like, let's start with the obvious, okay? Girls' Day was probably one of the top 3 or so most successful artists in 2014, and even among girl groups, like them, AOA and A-Pink were really like leading the charge for the sort of new wave of big girl groups. Like Something and Darling were two of the biggest girl group hits released in 2014, outperforming much more established groups like 21 and Girls' Generation. Like, for some context, okay? As we know, societally, there are 52 weeks in a year, right? Of the 52 weeks that make up 2014, Girls' Day spent 45 of those weeks somewhere on the Gaon charts and spent around a quarter of that inside the top 10. Not to mention, Girls' Day was one of the best-selling artists digitally in 2014. Need I remind you, Something was the best-selling single by a girl group released that year, and once you throw in Darling and I Miss You, Girls' Day sales easily cleared 3 million downloads. Basically, Girls' Day was on top of the world in 2014. I've consistently called this the Girls' Day peak, and it really is. And to understand that, we have to go talk about 2015. Guys, it's 2015. Which is so fun and so cute because I got into K-pop in 2015. I'm basically part of the lore. However, we're actually going to start 2015 the way we ended 2014, talking about Hyeri, specifically her show Jekyll, Hyde, Me, which ran through March, meaning for the first couple months of the year there were 2 actively airing Hyeri shows. However, Hyeri is not the only one doing things, because on March 16th we would get I Am a Woman 2, our first solo debut from me. The album actually did pretty great by Girls' Day standards. It would sell around 15,000 copies and peak at number 2, the highest peaking Girls' Day album in their entire history, and only being blocked from the number 1 spot by the first Red Velvet mini album, Ice Cream Cake. Then there's the title track, I Am a Woman 2, which would earn Mina a solo top 20 on the Gaon charts. It would peak at number 15 and sell around 300,000 downloads. Plus, on top of that, it would earn Mina a solo music show win over on Show Champions. So while this wasn't like the biggest solo debut I've ever covered, it certainly was successful. It's also just like a good song. I enjoy her. I will say, I think it sort of peaks at the halfway point and then starts going downhill. I think it's doing its best work when it lets her vocals shine more, and the back half of the song just doesn't hit the same way. Jumping ahead to May, Girls' Day released Hello Bubble. And before I tell you about the success of this song, I do want you all to know this song is an ad. This song is an ad for a hair care brand. Cool, so the song peaked at number 13 on the Gaon charts, number 26 on the Melon charts, charted for around 2 months, and sold 250,000 downloads. I know, in comparison to any Girls' Day single we've had in the last 2 years, at least the mainline ones, that's not very great. But that's an ad that sold 250,000 copies. Your ad earned you a top 20 single. June got us another solo release with Sojin teaming up with Zico, you know Zico, with Zico, to release the song Sick for the show Mask. And this song honestly did pretty great. It would peak at number 24 on the Gaon chart, so not insane by any means, but certainly not bad. Where it really thrived though was its longevity. Sick would chart for 4 months and sold more than 600,000 downloads. And then, in July, we would get the official return of Girls' Day with the release of Love, their second studio album, along with its lead single, Ring My Bell. And this album honestly popped off a little bit, at least by Girls' Day standards. It would peak at number 3 on the Gaon album charts, only being blocked by Girls' Generation and Big Bang. Not to mention, this is the highest selling Girls' Day album to this day, with more than 40,000 copies sold. And I know 40,000 does not sound like a ton in the modern day, and even in 2015 it wasn't crazy work, but that's more than anything they've ever released has sold. This is their best-selling album. Now let's talk about Ring My Bell, the title track of the album. And to be clear, this song was a definite decline from Darling and certainly from Something. However, this absolutely was still a big hit. Ring My Bell would peak at number 4 over on the Melon charts and did even better on the Gaon charts, where it peaked at number 2, being held from the top spot only by the icon that was the recently released Party by Girls' Generation. I will say, for those who don't know, this 3-week period, this July 2015 specifically, was a crazy stacked comeback season. You had comebacks from pretty much every big group you can think of. So Ring My Bell actually didn't pick up any music show wins, but it did still chart for around 4 months and sold 900,000 downloads. And here's the thing with Ring My Bell, right? Ring My Bell is a huge hit. Like, it is, right? Like, they were one of the best-selling girl group singles of 2015. However, Girls' Day was just doing so well with their 2014 releases that by comparison, this isn't anything but a disappointment. Like, both of their 2014 singles, other than I Miss You, but like Darling and Something, both went #1 on one of the charts. They both got music showings. By comparison, Ring My Bell flopped, but like at the same time, it was still a huge hit. Then there's the song itself. I would like to preface everything I'm about to tell you by saying I enjoy Ring My Bell. I like this song. However, I know I am in the minority opinion with that one. A lot of people will consider Ring My Bell to be the worst Girls' Day song of their post-2013 catalog, and I don't not get it. Like, this chorus can definitely get annoying. I wouldn't say it's their strongest release by any means, but I do think it's just a dumb, fun summer pop song. Now let's talk about the B-sides. Like with their first full, this album is largely made up of already released material, so much so, in fact, that on Apple Music, Love is considered a compilation album, with only 6 of the songs being new, and 2 of those are the title track and its instrumental. But of the new songs, they are good. Like, I like them. With Me is a much more classic Girls' Day sound, to the point that I'm a little surprised it isn't the single off the thing, or at least like a follow-up single maybe. There's also a ballad on the album, Come Slowly. Gorgeous, we all know that I love a Girls' Day ballad, and this one is no exception. And then for my golden B-side. My golden B-side is gonna go to Top Girl. I am actually not quite sure why. I stand by this choice, but like, I feel like I should enjoy a song like With Me more, if that makes sense. But either way, Top Girl is great. It's a banger. I love the chorus so bad. Promotion for Ring My Bell would take us into August, and then in September we got Girls' Day 2015 Autumn Party, the group's Japanese debut album. It was, as is the Girls' Day way, made up of previously released material, only this time it was a Japanese version of songs, and they even acknowledged their pre-2013 existence with Twinkle Twinkle. That said, this was no, like, massive success. It did fine, I would say. It's their only Japanese release, so, like, I don't really have anything to compare it to. It did fine. I would expect a bit better from a girl group like Girls' Day in Japan, but, like, it didn't do anything crazy. Now, that's all the mainline lore to discuss. However, at the end of 2015, we got Reply 1988, which was the final installment of the Reply series, which starred Hyeri as the lead. For those who don't know, the Reply series was a wildly successful, I guess, trilogy. It was sort of an anthology series, heavily rooted in nostalgia, incredibly successful. They'd had 3 shows in it. I'm like 90% sure Eunji from A-Pink got her big break in the first one in the 2012 series, but either way, the 2015 series, it was absolutely incredibly successful, to the extent that it was, in fact, the biggest show in the history of Korean television at the time of its release. And I don't mean that in the, like, Succession kind of way that I would consider Succession to be probably the biggest show of the 2020s so far. I mean that in the sense of this was the highest rated Korean television program at the time of its release, and even now, 10 years later, it is the 6th highest rated. However, not only was Reply 1988 commercially successful, Hyeri herself would get pretty widespread acclaim for her performance, winning several awards, meaning we have officially entered critically acclaimed actress Hyeri arc. But that is all I got for 2015, so let us jump back to the retrospective corner real quick. Alrighty, 2015. I've said this in other history ofs I've made, but I just love studying the year after a group peaks. Like Secret in 2012, 21 in like 2013, Sistar in 2015. When they're very much still at the top of their game, they're just starting the decline. And like obviously Girls' Day was still very popular in 2015. They had a hit of their own. Sojin got a hit of her own, admittedly more of a Zico hit, but still, she got that. Mina had a solo album. Hyeri was in the most successful drama of all time at that point. Yura also did stuff that I didn't feel like mentioning. We were thriving in 2015. The issue is, we were not only thriving in 2014, we were conquering in 2014, which meant that by comparison, 2015 felt a lot more lackluster. It obviously wasn't that bad, though. Like, Girls' Day were still popular, although admittedly, Their beginnings of a decline were not helped by the fact that they released nothing in 2016. And on that topic, I don't want to do a retrospective for 2016, so I'm not going to. I am a despot. This is my channel. I will see you again at the end of 2017. But with that, on to 2016 we go. Okay, 2016 time. Now, 2016 technically, the first thing to talk about would be the end of Reply 1988, but we already covered that, so we're just gonna fast forward. Instead, let's talk about Hyeri's next role, which was as the lead in the SBS show Entertainer. Entertainer would run from April through June, and while it was not the highest rated drama of all time at this point of its release, it was still pretty successful. Hyeri herself would be up for a couple different awards at the SBS Drama Awards that year, and would even win Best Newcomer. No time to dwell on Hyeri winning Best Newcomer in 2016. We have to move on and talk about Mina, who would also land her first lead role as the titular Gongshim in Beautiful Gongshim. This show was definitely a lot more popular than Entertainer had been, so I guess Mina did win this round, good for her. However, it is worth noting, in the canon of the show, she is considered the ugly sister. I just find this interesting, because, like, have you seen her face? Deranged stance. I just think it's funny whenever, like, a piece of media is trying to convince me that a woman is ugly, and I'm like, that's a gorgeous woman. What are you talking about that woman is ugly? If you wanted to get someone ugly, you should have cast a man. Anyway, that's all I got for 2016. It was a very light year for Girls' Day. I think you can get now why I didn't think we needed to do a retrospective corner, so we're just going to jump right into 2017. So, 2017, the final year we will be discussing in this video. And we're going to jump ahead to March when, after nearly 20 months of a hiatus, Girls' Day would finally return with Everyday Number 5. And right off the bat, this thing saw a pretty terrifying drop in album sales. It peaked fine. It peaked at number 5. Technically their lowest peaking album in a couple years, but like that's not the part I want to focus on. The part I want to focus on is that it sold 12,000 copies, okay? For a reminder, their previous release sold 40,000 copies, and even so, 12,000 copies makes this the lowest selling Girls' Day album in around 5 years since their second mini album. And then there's the single, I'll Be Yours. This song is very complicated to me. Like, right off the bat, it peaked well. It peaked strong. It peaked at number 3 on the Gaon charts, right? Like, real good. The same cannot be said for the Melon charts. It didn't do horribly, but it only peaked at number 23, making it their lowest peaking single there, their mainline single, I should say, in years. It also had the shortest charting run we've seen from Girls' Day in forever. It only charted for 6 weeks, making it their shortest run since 2012 for a mainline single. So we weren't thriving. It did get 2 music show wins, on a positive note. It got them their final 2 music show wins, so at least there's that. As a whole, though, I'll Be Yours is such a fascinating song to me for a couple reasons. The first one is being the obvious. This song is very hard to quantify in terms of its hit status, right? Like, on the one hand, it peaked really strong, but it also barely charted. And this is from a girl group, especially this number, that number 23, this is from a girl group that could easily get a top 20 on the Melon chart. So, like, that's not ideal. However, if I take Girls' Day and I compare them in their 2017 numbers to other girl groups from the time, those other girl groups were not doing nearly as well. So, like, it's complicated. However, I'll Be Yours is also a song. A good song, even. It's not a great song, not even my favorite song of March 2017. However, it's good. It has good music, a good chorus. I like it. However, like the success, it fails to live up to other Girls' Day singles. And now, for the final time, the Golden B-side. This was an easy one. Dare I say a really easy one? I'm giving it to Thirsty. That's like top 3 Girls' Day B-sides in their entire career. I'm not even joking. Like, this song is so good. It's so sexy. It's so cool. It's so distinctively unique compared to other songs while still very much sounding like a Girls' Day release. It's everything to me, okay? I told you there were 3 songs that have entered consistent streaming status. Thirsty's one of them. If you were wondering, the other one was Whistle off of their Something EP. That was the 3rd one that has entered consistent streaming status. We've now hit all 3. However, unfortunately, this is where our tale will end. Girls' Day obviously isn't gone after this. They're actually still active into 2018 as a group, but I feel like their last album is sort of the good place to end because they don't do anything of real note following this, which means for the final time in this video, we will be jumping back to the retrospective corner.
Can I be so honest for a second? I find the end of Girls' Day so wildly fascinating. I just think it's so interesting when you take a group like Girls' Day, or actually a lot of second generation artists, the artists that were more than willing to call it quits between like 2016 and 2018, right? Like that era of girl groups that called it quits. And you compare them to groups nowadays, groups that were at their peak easily as popular as Girls' Day, if not bigger. And groups nowadays who completely fail to chart whatsoever when they have a comeback. Like, I could talk about legacy and the fans and whether it's better to continue as an ever dwindling level of success or go out on top like Sister did. I could talk about all of that, but it implies anyone cares. And I don't mean like me or like you, like the fans. I mean the decision makers, the people in the room who are deciding whether or not they're going to offer an artist a contract, right? At the end of the day, I feel like I, if nothing else, really sometimes forget how much of a role money plays in these things. Because, like, if I look at Twice, for an example, Twice was the biggest girl group at one point in time. And now they have not charted a single in years. They still sell really well, though. Their tours still sell well, their albums sell well. They're still making money, which is why Twice continues to exist. Even if, in my personal opinion, I don't think they should have gone again. Like, I don't think they should have renewed their contracts. I think there's something nice about an ending instead of what we have now. Because in the modern day in K-pop, groups don't disband. Girls' Day technically has not disbanded. Girls' Day is technically still a group. They did a reunion stream thing, I think, like 3 days ago as of me filming this, right? Like, Girls' Day as an entity still does exist, but I think there is something nice about the concept of, like, this is our last album, and we're gonna go out on top. I'm gonna talk about that more potentially in a later video. I haven't decided if I want to make it yet, but for now, let's focus back in on Girls' Day. Girls' Day, by the end of their career, was massively influential. If you take Second Generation was long. If you take Second Generation and you sort of split it down the middle into, like, two halves, let's say, of the second half of Second Generation girl groups, Girls' Day was one of the biggest to do it. They were consistently adapting their sounds to fit what was trendy. They really were K-pop chameleons. Anyway, yeah, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, you can like and subscribe. Or don't. I'll really be fine either way. What else do I have to tell you? I will also, in the description, be putting Smokey Go's channel, Evolution of Playlist, as well as a playlist of 9. That's all my history ofs. They are truly the most mixed bag of things you'll ever see. I do not have a consistent style of group that I enjoy making. I've done everything from Hot, like the 1990s SM boy group, to like aespa. So like I've covered a wide range. You may check them out, however, if you so choose. I will say, since I'm here, I do really like making these. I feel like sometimes, I was more normal in this one, I will concede, but sometimes it does not come across how much I love making these. I have the time of my life making these. I do, however, want one thing known. This latest run, the last 4 I did, were my attempt to see if I could pump these out a little faster. I think I can, like physically. I don't think I can mentally. I've done 4 in the last 2 months now, like from EXO through this one, and I do think I could keep that up, but I think I am better when I take my time with them and when I spend like a full month really experiencing a group and do one a month. So that will be my schedule going forward if anyone was wondering what my history of schedule is. I go for 1 a month, give or take. Maybe every once in a while you'll get something special. But for the most part, I know what my next one will be. My next one will be dropping in August, specifically on August 2nd. So if you want to know when it's coming out then. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, like and subscribe if you want to or don't. I'll be fine either way. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Bye!